Welcome to College Football Roundtable, your source for college football coverage, including major storylines,
playoffs,
can't miss game previews, and picks each week. Join your hosts, Dan, Rob, and Jordan at the Roundtable for a show unlike anything else. As for Football presents the College Football Roundtable.
It's that time again. It's time for the College Football Roundtable. As of Saturday, Disney is no longer the most magical place on earth. It is Knoxville, Tennessee. The Tide loses on a special teams play, which over the year seems to be the trend for the program. I mean, usually when Bama drops one, there's a special teams play that's involved. Got the kick six, and now the glorious 40-yarder that won the game for the Volunteers. Michigan escapes the state pen, and we're at the midpoint of the college football season. What's up, Trash Talkers? Welcome back to College Football Roundtable. If you prefer, it's Ring Knocker Radio. We got 2 O's and an NCO. I'm your host, Rob, out of Fayetteville, North Carolina. We got Daniel Icabesa on the mean streets of Manhattan, and 7-0 Trigger Joe. We're just going to keep updating that one until something changes. How's it going today, guys?
Good, man. Super impressed by Joe's ability to stay hot. Although I was 3-0 this week, so I'll take it.
How about you, Joe?
Oh, man. I was going to say, thank God and thank goodness I'm hot because it's cold up here, brother. Dude, yeah, I'm feeling it right now. And I think Vegas is finally going to catch on to Illinois because that's 2 weeks in a row that they were dogs and thumped who they're playing. And how about Tennessee +7, Dano, winning outright? Oh, beautiful.
I'll take it, man. What a game.
Upset over Alabama.
Yeah.
We had
go ahead, man.
We had the tailgate TV going in the after the Army game, watching that Tennessee-Alabama game, and people just kind of kept matriculating over into the tailgate to check out what was going on. It was really fun.
Yeah, it was pretty nuts. All right, so we'll move on to the top 10 real quick. So Georgia is now number 1. They had no change. They had 31 first-place votes. Ohio State, that was inactive. They were idle last week. They got Iowa this week. We'll see if that changes. Tennessee flip-flops with Bama and actually jumps up to 3rd, so they went up +3. Michigan is 7-0. They got 1 slot up. They went from 5 to 4, and they're +1. Clemson dropped from 4 to 5. And, geez, I screwed that one up. Ole Miss is number 6. Number 7 is TCU. Number 9 is UCLA. And number 10 is Oregon. Regardless of how the top 10 shapes up, I mean, I think the top 5 are going to be the top 5 until the playoff committee makes their releases and then they play each other head-to-head. I think that's the only thing that's going to determine the difference in some of these contests is the head-to-head matchup. So now in the SEC, you're looking for SEC supremacy between Tennessee and Georgia since Bama got bumped off by Tennessee this weekend. And, of course, the game, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, is probably going to be a lot more important. Just looking at the records, I think both of those teams will be undefeated going into that contest in Columbus this year. And I think that'll be an interesting game. Ole Miss is quiet, but they are crushing it. They're 7-0 in the SEC. That's almost impossible to how are we not talking about that? I think Ole Miss is a for real team. They're slowly chipping away. TCU looks dangerous, man. Their offense, their offense is crazy good. Their defense, hey, it's a Big 12, but they're still winning games. That overtime game against Oklahoma State was amazing to watch if you didn't check that one out. Again, Group of 5 teams getting no love in the top 10. You only have 2 Group of 5 teams that have broken into the top 25. So that's Cincinnati and Tulane. Top 25 losses this week, of course, is Bama being the most notable. Penn State, USC, Oklahoma State, NC State, and JMU knocked themselves out. And that's unfortunate because, James Madison, they're kind of in a unique place. So if they run the table, even if they win 6 games, they're not bowl eligible. They might get a waiver just because they're doing so well this season. But because of the transition from FCS to FBS, they have to take like a year off to get all their planning and everything done. But I think because of the COVID year and everything else that's going on, if those guys are postseason eligible, I think they should give them the nod.
Absolutely. But you can't lose to Georgia State, man.
Yeah, true.
They're my new like arch nemesis They beat Army. They come out, they beat Madison, but like your record's 500. It's like, dude, you show up to play every Saturday, or you guys phoning some in? Like, how's this happening?
They did the same thing last year. They started real slow and then beat
That's
Coastal.
coaching, man.
Yeah, wound up. I mean, it's crazy. That team has all the talent in the world. I mean, they've really got a lot of good players. You could see it on the field when they played Army. Like, that's a huge team with a lot of speed.
Yeah, I think that Georgia State is sleeping on themselves, which is really what makes them a bad team. Like if they were to show up and play as hard as they did in some of these contests every game, I think that would be cool. Not on here, but pretty notable upset that was not in the top 25 or talked about was Old Dominion beating up on Coastal. Like Old Dominion beat Coastal pretty handily, and that sucks because they're former Army opponent. But that just goes to show like these teams that are starting to creep up from FCS into FBS. When they're making the plunge, they're actually doing it right because they're really holding their own against some decent programs. And if it would have been 5 years ago, we would have said, "Oh, Coastal Old DU, nobody cares. That game doesn't matter." But this past weekend, that was actually a legit football contest. So if you haven't checked out the highlights on that one, highly encourage you to do that. Others receiving votes in the top 25. The spoiler makers: Purdue got 95 votes, LSU got 87. And really, the only one of note that I would toss out there, and there's just because they're a former Army opponent, is Liberty. They got 2 first place votes, and James Madison got 6, even though they fell out of the top 25. But again, like you're starting to see these teams, like I said, come from FCS into FBS and they're making waves, and I think that's good. Particularly just based off of location. If you notice, like these teams that are doing well have a tie to Virginia, and there's a lot of athletes in that area. It's just north of the Mason-Dixon where, most of your speed gets recruited in the South. However, when you look at how those teams are playing, they're doing pretty good. Dive into Service Academy football real quick. Navy lost to SMU 40-34. I think the most interesting part of the game was Donkey taking a crap on the field. I think that kept everybody's interest for a few seconds as the game was delayed and everybody was like, what's taking so long? And the ESPN announcers, of course, didn't have anything to talk about but them cleaning up the horse crap, so it just made it that much more painful. Air Force smoked UNLV in a game that I don't think anybody but on the left coast watched. Their final score was 42-7. Air Force looked good another week. They're up and down. It's just completely inconsistent, and I think that's the biggest thing that we could say about all 3 service academies is inconsistent play this season. Army beat Colgate 42-17. The best part of it is Army got to rest some of their nicked up starters. We dove pretty deep into that discussion as they're getting ready to play ULM this weekend. They have a good chance of beating this team pretty handily because ULM is a not so great program. I mean, they're another one of those teams that kind of moved up, had a surge where they looked pretty good for a year or two, and then now like recruiting is starting to catch up with them. Again, you're the University of Louisiana Monroe. You're competing with LSU, Bama, and then everybody else that's in the Pac-12, or not the Pac-12, the Big 12 and the SEC to kind of get recruits. So it makes it a little bit more difficult. Dan, you want to take the Commander-in-Chief trophy status?
Yeah, well, obviously we don't know what's going on with the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. I mean, you got Army Air Force in the early November. That game's going to be important because our Air Force with the win over Navy, if they win that one, they'll just win the trophy outright. Otherwise, we're looking at a pretty big game in December, which frankly is what I'm expecting. But who knows what Air Force team is going to show up. They've been all over the place, just like you said. And, real quick on ULM, like they're right in the wrong place for the transfer portal because their good kids are getting nicked up by SEC programs or Power 5 programs to say, hey, you don't have to play at Louisiana Monroe. You can come up here and play in the Power 5. And so now they're trying to scavenge, and there's like so much competition for the also rans, like the 5th linebacker at Alabama. And I don't know how many of those battles ULM is winning over, say, Coastal or Georgia State.
Yeah, I think the transfer portal is really starting to affect college football, and again, we talk about name, image, and likeness a lot, but the transfer portal is just as bad, I think. I hate to say it that way, but it's like free agency in college football, right? So like 1 minute a guy that you like is playing for Oklahoma, the next year he's playing, like look at Trey Sermon. Like if he wouldn't have got hurt in the, in the Northwestern game towards the tail end of the season, who knows how Michigan and Ohio State would have ended up. But you wouldn't even have known that guy was playing for Oklahoma for all those years, and then all of a sudden he shows up and shows out at another school. But Joe, you had a comment?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with the transfer part. I think the NIL, they don't really, it's so early in its infancy that they don't really know that whether it's good or bad yet. I believe it's going to eventually be monitored quite heavily. But the transfer portal, like Colorado State got 9 guys from Nevada, including 3 coaches and 6 players. That's not right. That's not right, because the University of Nevada got hosed on that deal. I mean, the coach left, and he's told 4 or 5 players, hey, come on with me, like it was the movie Any Given Sunday, and he was talking, the Al Pacino, Jamie Foxx move where he left and signed them. Well, he did that.
Yeah.
4 years ago, obviously that was like, oh, yeah, it's a nice thought, but you can't take your quarterback with you. Now you can. And I absolutely loathe that part.
Yeah, look at the success that
team's chemistry, makeup, look, everything overnight. It's like, how do you scout that? But anyways, I believe that that's going to get eventually regulated myself. So sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at the success that USC had too, so you look at freaking old Lincoln Riley jumping from Oklahoma going out to USC and taking his quarterback with him, and everybody was talking about Caleb Williams last year, like, hey, this kid's the future of Oklahoma. He's going to be great. He's going to be the next great, Oklahoma quarterback, like along the lines of God, I can't even remember his name now because he stinks so bad at Carolina. Baker Mayfield, right? So you're looking at those guys. You got the Baker Mayfields and the Kyler Murrays, and they were lumping, Caleb Williams into that same batch of quarterbacks. And then all of a sudden, he's in California, and he doesn't have to sit out. And I think that's the main part is, once you transfer, if you still have eligibility, there's no requirement for you to redshirt. And I think that honestly is the part that hurts the most, because I think a player would be less apt to pull the trigger if he had to sit out for a year as he previously had to versus what he has to do today.
Well, that's another thing. You want your quarterback to say, wait a minute, there's adversity here? No, I don't want that. I don't want that kind of mindset in my quarterback. Like, oh, I got to work to start. I'm going to have to battle. You'll just give it to me? Okay, I'll take what you just – well, what are you going to do in the fourth quarter when you got a high ankle sprain probably and you're down 4? You're going to quit. If that's your mindset. I don't want my quarterback to say, well, give me the easiest path. I'll leave and go to play at Colorado State then. Well, good call. Look how Colorado State's doing.
Yeah. Well, we beat this part up to death, but we'll continue on really quick with the it's good. No, it's good conversation. It's part of college football now, so we can't avoid having the conversation. But looking at the FCS academies, you got the Coast Guard Academy. They're 2-5. They're clearly better on the water than they are on the land because they lost a close one to Catholic this weekend. They have MIT this week. Merchant Marine Academy is 5-1. They shut out MIT 17-0, and then they take on Catholic this weekend in DC. So they flip-flopped opponents between the service academies in the FCS arena. All right, Joe. So now it's time for you to kind of lay down who is your Blue Falcon of the week.
You know what? I hate going Big Ten heavy, but I'm gonna. Penn State, come back when you have a team, okay? And James Franklin, I'm sick of the hype this dude gets every year, and Penn State comes out and goes 8-3, 9-3, 8-4. Like, man, I was so stoked for that game, and it was over midway into the second half. So my Blue Falcon of the week is Penn State, who's supposed to be the second tier underneath Michigan and Ohio State in the Big Ten, coming out and laying an egg. And these middle-of-the-road Big Ten teams, like Minnesota. 5 weeks ago, they were number 5. Penn State does this crap every year where they come out and it's like, oh, look out, they're going to be – then they go 8-3. So my Blue Falcon of the week is Penn State and the effort they put forth this weekend because Michigan absolutely throttled them.
Wow. Okay, so Nittany Lions, you are on notice. Yeah, go ahead and buy your T-shirt. You are the Blue Falcon of the week. Let's talk about games of the week real quick. Again, Wednesday night games, getting after it. Hey, this one will probably be a pretty good game. So you've got Georgia State and App State playing at 7:30 on ESPN2 on Wednesday. I think both of these teams are kind of seeking their identity. You've got Georgia State, that's 500. App State, that's dropped a couple. This one will be for some respect. And these are both really good teams that can actually play some football. So if you're looking to watch a football contest, I would tell you to check that one out. App State and Georgia State, 7:30 ESPN on Wednesday. Thursday on the 20th, we've got Troy and South Alabama. At first, I was like, oh, I don't know if this game is going to be any good. And then I watched the highlights of South Alabama against ULM because I was prepping to watch the ULM game. And that offense is pretty potent. And so Troy's a good team, future Army opponent, and South Alabama coming off of the whooping that they put on ULM. I think that would be a good game to watch too. That's probably better than your Amazon Prime Thursday night football. I don't know if you've been watching that, but Al Michaels has been laying an egg just about every week on the commentary. So if you want to watch a game with some good commentary, probably pull up the home feed on the Varsity app if they have it for NFL games, and listen to your home broadcast because it is getting pretty rough on Thursday night football. All right, Friday, October 21st, you got Tulsa and Temple. Maybe not a game to watch, but I mean, both of those teams are kind of so-so, but I think that'll be good game to watch. It's Friday if you have nothing else to do. You got UAB and Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky is quietly doing pretty so-so. They're a streaky team. They're up and down. They're usually, 1 year they're good, 1 year they're terrible. UAB, they're the Blazers. They're fighting, contrary to popular belief, every game that UAB wins helps their program stay alive because they had been talking about canceling that program a couple of years ago. So by winning, it just gives them a little bit more salt to stay in the game. Early kicks on Saturday. You got Indiana and Rutgers on the Big Ten Network. You got UT Martin and Tennessee. That's a cupcake game for Tennessee. But, hey, stranger things have happened in college football. Maybe they'll play them tough. I seriously doubt it, but I think that'll be a good game. Hopefully, it's a trap game by definition, though, if you look at it, because you have a team that just won against a really tough rivalry team. They have first time that they've won against Bama since 2006 at home. Highly emotional win, and then they're taking on a school that they should handily beat. And so don't be surprised if the first half of the first quarter is a little bit sketchy for Tennessee just because they're having that emotional letdown from that big win. And then I'm sure that they will take over when the power of the depth chart at Tennessee takes over the game.
Vegas feels the same way. There's no line on that game.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be a halfway decent spread, at least 14.5, but I don't think that'll firm up until the end of the week. So you're looking at ULM and Army kicking at noon. Again, that's a toss-up, and that's like Army's in the same situation this week as they were last week. Every game is a must-win. Honestly, they need to go 1-0 every week until the end of the season, and we covered that in much more depth on the other show. You got Kansas and Baylor. That looks to be a good game. Again, believe it or not, if you want to watch some good high-scoring football contests, watch the Big 12. Like, those guys are out of control because there's zero defense and about 600 yards of offense every week. You've got Iowa at Ohio State. If it was Ohio State at Iowa, I would be concerned because Kinnick Stadium is like kryptonite to the Buckeyes sometimes. So you have to watch out for that one, but they're playing at home, so it shouldn't be that big a deal. Syracuse and Clemson, those are two undefeated teams in a ranked matchup. That will be a great game to watch. Houston plays Navy. That's ESPNU at noon. Afternoon kicks, big games that I think that you should check out. I think Georgia Southern and Old Dominion will be a good game. Those guys are pretty tight and they're playing pretty well. Memphis at Tulane, who's ranked number 25. You got BC and Wake Forest at 3:30 on the that should be interesting. Boston College is another one of those ACC teams that they could be 3-3 going into any contest at somebody else's place and upset them at home. And I think that's perfectly reasonable with Wake Forest. Not to say that Wake is going to backslide, but they've slowly been creeping up and performing better and better each week. But I don't know if Boston College has enough juice. You've got UCLA and Oregon. That should be an interesting game. UCLA is finally starting to get a little bit of respect. Oregon, really, the only loss they had was to the previous year's, champion, to Georgia. And every other game, they've been playing pretty solid. So that should be a good game. You've got Texas and Oklahoma State. Woo! Folks, take the over on that one. Like, if you're going to put some money down, take the over on that one. Because I think, again, Big 12, no defense. Oklahoma State's offense is pretty potent. And with Quinn Ewers being healthy, the Texas offense looks completely different as it did when he wasn't in. So I think that's going to be a good game. You've got Ole Miss, who's undefeated, going into Death Valley. It's LSU. Evening kicks, big things. You guys got Mississippi State and Alabama. Can Alabama bounce back? That one's going to be tough. I haven't looked at the line on that one, but I would definitely take the over if, and here's why. Because anytime Bama loses, Saban comes back with a vengeance on whoever it is. Like you could be, the freaking San Francisco 49ers playing Alabama, and he's going to hang 70 on them just because he's pissed off and he's got to pass the eye test, right? So you lost to Tennessee, which is a great game, but now you had to start banking some street cred to get points back, and so I think Bama will put it on them. You got Boise State and Air Force. That should be an interesting one, Mountain West matchup, and it's actually at a decent time, so it's kicking at 7:00, so you can actually watch that game without staying up until the ass end of the night. You've got Minnesota and Penn State. Again, that's the battle of the middle tier in the Big Ten. I mean, if you're a fan of either one of those teams, it'd probably be worth watching. I think it'll be a good game, but it's middle tier Big Ten football. You got K-State at TCU. That's another one. Take the over. Like that one's going to be ridiculous. And just because K-State is doing good, like I said, if Martinez would have transferred out of Nebraska a year sooner, if he would have taken advantage of that COVID year and transferred in 2021 before Frost got the boot, I think he would have been a better option at any other Big 12 school. But he's playing incredibly well. They're not talking about him Heisman wise just because, it's K-State. Like nobody really cares what's going on there, but he's playing well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all right, well, that's pretty much it for the slate for Saturday. We've got some more games in there, but we're not going to belabor the point. Dan, what game are you going to be watching this week?
It's all about the Service Academy games for me. Oh my God, I got a helicopter flying over, so apologies on the audio here. But yeah, I mean, if Navy can hang with Houston, then I'll actually be a believer. Even if they don't win the game, but they just keep it respectable, that's going to be pretty impressive. Their offense has definitely come around. Of course, the Army game we've talked about, that's a must win. I mean, Black Knights have got to have that game. And Air Force, they really should beat Boise State, but it seems like they never do. So, and Boise's not particularly good this year, but it's an interesting contest. Like, what Air Force team is going to show up? Are they literally going to show up every other week? Because that is what we've seen. And lastly, working in New York, a lot of people who went to the Qs don't really believe Syracuse can hang with Clemson, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, that's fair. What about you, Joe?
I'll be peeking at the Iowa-Ohio State game. I don't like that line at minus 29 points. I think Ohio State could win that game. It's two really good defense. So it'll be interesting to see. And then Syracuse and Clemson at noon. I think Syracuse is getting a little disrespected with this line. So I'm interested to see how because they came out and shut NC State down last week, and Clemson gave up 20 to them. So should be interesting to see because Clemson didn't look invincible against Florida State. I know because that was the end of my parlay and they covered, but just by 6. So I'm interested to see that one. And then 3:30, I'm going to be watching Texas, Oklahoma State, man. I want to see some fireworks on that one, and I believe that's another one where I think Oklahoma State's getting a little disrespected at home, getting 6 points. Needless to say, they're going to be in my bets. And then Kansas State and TCU, I cannot wait to see the Battle of the Purple. The toughest purple team in the nation is going to come out of that game. So I got the Horned Frogs in that one, but it's going to be a good one to watch.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, again, we've all touched on the ones that I'm going to be watching. Iowa at Ohio State, I think it's a death trap if you're playing at Iowa. I don't care who you are. If you're undefeated going into Iowa, you're probably going to lose. That's just the way that it is. Something about that stadium has the ability to suck talent out of whatever team is playing there. Really, the big question, though, for that game is, does C.J. Stroud really step up and kind of solidify his lead in the Heisman race? Because, again, Bryce Young played a great game, lost to Tennessee. If C.J. Stroud shows up and throws another 6-touchdown game, then he's in rarefied air. He's already there as far as Ohio State quarterbacks is concerned. He's one of the first guys to throw 3 consecutive 300-plus yard games and have 6 touchdowns in 3 consecutive games. That's a lot of points. And so just scoring-wise, he's probably one of the most prolific passers in college football, regardless of what school you're in. But if he doesn't show up for this game, then I think it puts it back into Stetson Bennett's hands. And again, I think you're in a two-man race right now for the Heisman between C.J. Stroud and Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett showed up this weekend, had a couple touchdown passes, had a couple touchdown runs, but here's the thing, they weren't playing anybody of significance. And so really to set yourself apart in the Heisman, you got to play big in big games. And it sounds cliche, but that's kind of the way that it goes. And again, K-State and TCU, straight up shootout, man. Like if you want to watch, like, thank God neither one of those guys are my team because I couldn't have the heart attack. I love watching college football where there's a whole bunch of scoring, so long as it's not a team that I'm really invested in, because then it becomes a nail biter and I don't like to watch those. But I have no dog in the fight between TCU and K-State. So whoever wins that game, it's going to be awesome. I think there's going to be a lot of offense scored. Don't be surprised if they score 100 points. I think the line is like 68.5. I think it's going to be well over that points wise at the end for the total. And again, I'll be checking in on Bama and Penn State just to see which team will bounce back better, because I think both of those teams will win. I just don't know by how much or how significant. But all that being said, let's pick some games.
Weekly locks.
Dan, who are you watching and who are you picking?
So I went 3-0 last week. That was pretty cool. I was super happy. So I'm going to take both Army and Navy over. We've given Navy's defense a lot of credit and have been really good, especially against the run. But kind of like Army, they've been getting beat over the top like a ton in some of these American contests. And it's amazing because they're actually playing well against the American Conference. Like they're winning games, but it's because their offenses come around. What a weird season for the Mids. So anyway, I think the over-under is like 51. I'll take that over. And Army, I said this on the both on our show and on the preview today. A couple of years ago, I would have taken this to be a low-scoring game, Army versus ULM. This week, no. Army's offense is potent. They've been giving up a ton of points too. Take the over. That's 55.5. And yeah, that's it. Just two picks for me.
All right, Dano's got two picks. Again, over on both service academies, Army at 55.5 and Navy at over 51. I think both of those are pretty reasonable. For me, I went 1 and 2, man. I got smacked around because some of the shenanigans that happened. TCU and OSU went 68.5. Kansas lost by 10, which is kind of disappointing because I wanted to see them bounce back, but I don't think they're going to have a strong I don't think they're going to have a strong showing. I think they're going to go 50-50 until their quarterback comes back, if he comes back this season. And then Penn State, they sputtered a little bit, put some window dressing up towards the end of the game, and that was kind of the difference on the over on that one. My picks this week, hey, like I said, I'm staying on the heater between TCU and K-State. It's 59 points. They're going to score way more than that, so don't even – go ahead, Joe.
It's actually 55.5, brother. So
it's
100%.
Like it's 55.5. What game? What teams are they scouting? Yeah. What teams are they scouting? Because it's going to be way higher than that. This one's a little bit touchy for me, but I hope the line moves a little bit more. I think Minnesota will cover 4.5. I think Penn State is looking for an upset. They've already had an emotional letdown playing against Michigan this last week, and this is the battle of the also-rans in their respective divisions. But I think PJ Fleck, tends to get his team ready to go. I'm going to say Minnesota to cover 4.5, but I think it'll be a field goal or less in this one. It's probably maybe an overtime game is my prediction on that one. And then, of course, I'm going to be bold in this one and take the under on Wake and BC. When I initially looked at it, it was 61.5. I think Wake will score 40-45, but I don't see Boston College scoring 20, 21 points. So I think take the under on that one. And Joe, over to you.
Yeah, I like that pick. Boston College is averaging 20 points flat on offense for the season, so they're not going to get to that number against Wake Forest. I like that pick. So, all right, I'm rolling on a heater, boys. I'm 9-1 in my last 10, 3-0 last week. Clemson covered. Illinois was a dog, and they won outright. And then I cannot remember my third, but. What was it, boys? Doesn't matter. I just checked it before I got here, but it was Illinois. I'm actually gonna roll with them until they lose, but I got Syracuse plus 13.5. Sorry, I was looking at something there and got lost on it. But I got Syracuse coming into Clemson. Clemson only beat Florida State by 6 points, and they look very, very touchable. Syracuse has been playing really well. Their defense is averaging 13.2 points a game. They're only giving up 95 rush yards. So I'll take Syracuse in the points, plus 13.5 there. I like the spoiler makers going into Wisconsin, getting 2 points. I don't see how that's possible, but I got Purdue plus 2 at Wisconsin. And I'm taking Oklahoma State plus 6 against Texas. I think that's going to be a very close game. I think Texas probably comes out with a W if that game goes to overtime, but I got Oklahoma State plus 6. And then I don't want to piggyback off one of yours, but I'm going to have to take the over in the TCU game. And I might parlay that with TCU minus 3, but I love the over 55.5. So there's 4 there. TCU, Kansas State over 55.5, Oklahoma State plus 6, Purdue plus 2, and Syracuse plus 13.5. So I'm going all dogs here.
Yeah. And that's fair because I mean, that's what got me last week is kind of leaning towards the teams that were dogs last week. Maybe it'll turn around. But again, like one of the things that we're going to talk about, and we kind of teed it up for this week, but we'll tease it for next week, is how rushing wins football. And we'll dive into the numbers a little bit deeper, but you got to think the winningest teams in college football run the ball well. And usually it's just something out of a changeup to, keep the defense honest, but it also sets up play action. And every team now, unfortunately, I think is running some variation of RPO, which drives me insane. But we'll dive into that a little bit deeper next week, just because Dan is on the go and we haven't gotten into the numbers as deep as we would like. But all that being said, this is going to be another great week of college football. We're at the halfway point, folks. Can you believe it? We are in week 8. Holy moly. And then, the rest of the season will play out. And then we should get next week or the following week, right before Halloween really is when it comes out, will be the first college football playoff rankings. I don't see much change in the top 4. I think it'll be the ranked teams right now, unless somebody loses between now and then. So I think your top 4 seeds will be Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Michigan. So you have Georgia and Michigan, which will be a rematch from last year's playoff if it continues to stay the way that it is. And then you have Georgia or Ohio State and Tennessee. I think that would be a great game. Like, I want to see those guys play like today.
It was
right?
Tennessee was my third pick last week, by the way. I took Tennessee plus 7.
There you go. Yeah, I think if the matchups stay the way that they are, Clemson will be on the outside looking in, but that's not because of, it's not because of their play in the conference. It's just because they just don't look as impressive as those other 4 teams. But all that being said, we thank you guys for checking us out. This has been the 2 O's and an NCO show, or Ring Knocker Radio. We thank you guys for checking us out. Hey, make sure, remember, and we'll say it one more time, if you don't have money to bet, don't bet at all. If you've got access to FanDuel or some of the other like crazy betting services that are out there, take your chances, but always look at the ones that kind of give you some money back for the prelims, just to try it out. If you lose your money or you don't make any money back, you probably shouldn't be betting. That's probably a fair point. But other than that, we look forward to doing this one next week, and we'll see what the fallout is from this weekend. But again, you've got all 3 service academies in action this weekend, and we got some good matchups. The Battle of the Purples between TCU and K-State. If you're not watching that game, I think you're going to be sorely disappointed if you like offense. But other than that, I am Rob, the Angry Colonel, for Trigger Joe in the great state of Michigan, and Dano Ikebesa in the Big Apple, which is slightly more attractive than the Little Apple. If you've never been to Manhattan, Kansas, you are not missing much. But we'll see you guys next week with the College Football Roundtable, and we'll check you guys out later. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Ask for Football College Football Roundtable. Tune in next week as the AFF team brings you more hot takes and college football analysis. We'd like to thank our sponsor, BuyerBarn.com. BuyerBarn.com is the world's first platform to perform online auctions and sales for farm animals. BuyerBarn.com is dedicated to helping small farmers in America and are extending a special discount to military veterans who want to help in the revolution of the family farm. Go to BuyerBarn.com/military. That's BuyerBarn.com, BYREBARN. buyerbnb.com to learn more and to get started, or email them at info@buyerbn.com. Thanks again for listening to As for Football, College Football Roundtable, and as always, beat Navy.